Good morning from beautiful Brisbane, Australia. How are you this morning? It's hump day here. I'm really looking forward to this morning's broadcast because we're going to be presented with some really good information plus some awesome ideas of where to begin with co-regulation. If you're here for the replay, do a hashtag replay. If you're here on Facebook, remember to hit follow so you know when I go live. And if we're here on YouTube, remember to hit subscribe to know when the latest videos are out. Thank you all for taking the time to come along and join in. I really appreciate you. And those that come afterwards to watch, it's amazing that you spend time watching. If you're here live, remember to say g'day because it's always good to have you here watching and appreciating, and always feel welcome to ask questions. So much of what I'm able to present to you is new information because we're the first generation to have this information, to have the language, and I know this because I've been at this for over 30 years to find out what was happening for me, why things happened for me in my life, and to gain a deeper understanding. And I have consistently pursued looking for the answer for why. And when I began to become a trauma recovery coach, and when I began to do all the reading, and I found this passion for what happens for us at a neurobiological, neurochemical, neuroception level, I realised that everything neuro was my passion. And then, it actually happened to tie in with my health and why my health had continually gone downhill over many, many years. And that's the thing with complex PTSD. It's not overnight, as in, think of that saying where it says, it won't happen overnight, but it will happen. And we usually use that saying to point to the good things. Okay, so whatever we want in life that's good, it hasn't happened yet, but it will happen. Well, our health with complex PTSD is exactly the same. If we haven't recognised that childhood trauma is behind what's happening in our brain at a neuro level, then it makes it really hard to identify what's happening now. But having not identified what's happening at a neurological level, our health goes increasingly downhill. And if you're like me, it gets to the point where you can't even get out of bed. And that's where I was at a number of years ago. Couldn't walk, couldn't talk, had no memory of how to do anything in life, like how the heck do I do the washing? But at the time, I also needed a full-time carer. Obviously, I can walk and talk, and I have a decent amount of memory these days, and I don't have a full-time carer, but I'm still working through what's happening at a neurological level. And when I found out today's information about co-regulation, it really, really resonated with me, and I find that I was like, yes, this explains so much of what happened at a relationship level for me as well. We're looking at co-regulation because co-regulation is the core in order for us to be able to self-regulate. And when we were children, we never experienced co-regulation. Therefore, it becomes harder to self-regulate. So what I want to do is, we've got two infographics this morning, and they're bigger because I wanted to put in as much information for you as I could. So what is co-regulation, and how can we implement it into not just our day-to-day lives, but into our relationships? What's it look like when we're co-regulating? So co-regulation is the ability to regulate our aroused emotions in the presence of another whilst feeling safe, supported and in a trusted environment. So think about when we were kids, we weren't able to express how we felt. We weren't taught to express how we feel and to understand what's happening for us at an emotional level. And there wasn't that level of safety or security or trust in our childhood environment. Now, quite often, that concept, that understanding can happen without trauma even being involved because of the generational heritage that even our parents and grandparents inherited. So that's what makes this very challenging as well, because when trauma's added in, it makes it even more complex at the neuro level, because this affects the deep hidden parts in our brain. And when that happened in childhood, everything begins with a fear response, but we don't necessarily know when we're triggered, and we have to be able to look to our body and what's happening inside our body to understand when co-regulation, so the ability to be in a safe and secure and trusted environment with someone else. So think of your current partner or whoever it is that there is no safety, security and trust with. Think about the heightened arousal of your emotions and how hard it is to regulate them, like they literally go off the charts. Okay? So it does begin with the difference in our brain development in childhood from the trauma that we experienced, and our brain did develop differently. One of the core things is, instead of responding to a situation with the belief that I can manage this, my brain will automatically believe that it's a fear-filled situation. So one of the things we need to do is retrain our brain that when we can recognise that we're operating out of fear, that we can say, no, I don't need to fear, this is manageable. But of course, once the fear part in the primal part of our brain is triggered, the emotional centre, the amygdala, it goes off like a frog in a sock, and then the limbic system leaves to go into fight, flight or freeze mode. So when we're triggered, we know we're triggered, and we don't have access to the prefrontal cortex, which is logic, order, fine motor skills, and so much more. Okay, so what are we going to do? We're going to begin to understand when we're not co-regulating, so we've disconnected from the conversation and our body's responding with the trigger. Okay, when we're communicating with us, we want to build that awareness of when that's happening. We want to begin to develop the awareness of our body cues, that what's happening outside of us in this relationship is disrupting the inside of us. Okay, so we want to be able to feel when, or become aware of the heightened state of arousal that is initiated in the primal part of our brain, that we are no longer safe and we can't trust what is happening around us. All right? As parents, we need to help teach our children this. Absolutely. Because co-regulation in childhood is the beginning of self-regulation in adulthood. So our ability to self-regulate when we have heightened emotions, and they scientifically and with professionals, they use it as a term of heightened arousal, it goes out the window. And I can absolutely guarantee that I'm aware of when I have heightened arousal, especially around anger, that I've been triggered. One, because I'm not by nature an angry person, and two, because the anger is so cyclical that it's going around and around and around, and you can make no sense of it. There's no logical reason why I'm angry, nor why I can't get off the anger spin cycle. So that's what it's like. It's like a washing machine going around and around and around, and we can't get off that cycle in our brain. And so that's when we know our body and the cues around us have disrupted our regulation. So I'm just going to grab my cuppa here. I hope you've got yours this morning too. Now, another reason why we want to learn this is because when we have co-regulation happening and we feel safe and secure, we can be bold, we can be creative, we can be expansive. Our world becomes bigger, not just our internal world, but our external world. And where we want to impact the world begins to be a place where we want to be, where we want to explore it, where we want to involve creativity. And for me, I can tell you that 30 years ago, I would never have believed I had a creative bone in my body, ever. Ever. It was just like everything was black and white and stay focused, stay in order, and there was no creativity. Now it comes quite in abundance, but I still have to work on understanding co-regulation and self-regulation, especially when I get tired. So think of the HALT acronym: hungry, angry, lonely, and tired. Tired is the thing that tips me into not being able to self-regulate. We want to do this because it helps soothe our sympathetic nervous system, and we want to be feeling as safe and secure because it supports our physical and mental health. Okay, so think about how we want to improve our physical and mental health, or think of it the opposite way. If we're not co-regulating, then our physical and mental health goes downhill. All right, it might be incremental, but over time it adds up, and we are very aware. Think of the last time you had a migraine. Where was it that your body responded in such a manner that you were no longer co-regulating, and you needed to remove yourself from the situation because you had a migraine? This is why this co-regulation is so important. Because we don't want to become more unwell, we want to become more well. Without it, our relationships will go downhill when there is the overwhelm or we feel unsafe. So we will begin to respond in a manner that is not who we are, that is not logical, that is off the charts at times. And I say this because I can just see this happening in the past for me. Whenever I felt unsafe, I definitely would lose the plot. And sometimes I don't want you to think that lose the plot means that we're externally going off like a frog in a sock. I want you to think that for some of us, it's an internal going off like a frog in a sock and going round and round in circles because we don't actually say it out loud. All right, that's a really important point to consider when you're dysregulated. Are you talking it out, or are you keeping it locked away inside? And sometimes we have to keep it away, locked inside, because we don't have somebody there that provides that safe and secure environment for us to be able to express ourselves. We want to begin to be able to regulate the intensity of the effects of the trigger. So rather than having to spend ages going around and around on the same gymnastic cycle, and that's what it's like. It's like a mental workout that we don't talk about. We want to be able to begin to speak up and be aware of what caused our body to begin to not feel safe and secure. And where do we go from here? So where do we go from here? What are we looking at in order of the ability of how to help ourselves and how to begin to change this around as an adult, especially if we're in a relationship. So we need to develop an awareness of when our body's being triggered by noticing our emotions and our emotional reactions when interacting with other. Now, if in childhood you had the overwhelm of this person 4 times bigger than me, who's doing and saying things that are just so overwhelming I had no language, then in adulthood, one of the important things that we do is begin to be able to feel safe and secure to talk about that I've been triggered, the overwhelm's happened, and I've got to begin to either take time out for me and work through it, or understand what triggered it in order that I can go in the opposite direction. It takes time to have this level of self-awareness, by the way. So if somebody comes up to you and they're all jovial and, they understand self-regulation and, they've got it happening for them, think twice. Because I've been doing this level of awareness progressively over time for the last 26 years. And it's not until I began to read about co-regulation and understanding it, I could gain why I couldn't self-regulate when I'm tired. Okay, and I was actually listening to Dr. Stephen Porges talk about this. He's the originator of the polyvagal theory, and he even talks about the level of self-awareness that this takes, and it's a very increased level of self-awareness. When dysregulating, we want to focus on the emotion, not what is being said and not what is being acted out, so not the behaviour. We want to teach ourselves and our partner to recognise it, and when it happens to say stop, okay? Just stop and take some deep breaths and take some time out for your whole limbic system to regather in the right space, for your prefrontal cortex to be on board and be able to put logic back into the situation, all right? So think about it. When you're having heightened arousal, instead of going off at your spouse, you want to be able to go, let's stop. I've just had an aha moment that my body is being triggered because I feel unsafe, or I don't feel there's security or trust here for me. And even though I trust you, I'm feeling that somewhere inside of me there is that level of none of that happening. And I want to look at what's happening internally, emotionally for me. Give yourselves time and space. Breathe. So do 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out for a minute. So that's 6 times each. And don't resume the conversation until both of you are regulating, feeling safe and secure, and trust has been re-established. So even if it means that you're putting into order a sequence of how we're going to make this happen, who's going to talk first, who listens, and then vice versa, who's talking, who's listening, and you're rebuilding that space of safety, security, and trust in order that you can speak out what's happening for you. Both of you can modulate your voice and your face to soothe. So no resting witch face. It's got to be a resting, okay, from my heart I care about what's happening for you, and together we can put down boundaries around communication, who listens, who talks, and vice versa. And we can also speak to each other in a manner where we both feel safe, secure, and it's a trusting environment. So I'm trusting you. I'm consciously choosing to trust you, okay? You can use play to soothe your sympathetic nervous system, all right? So you want to bring play back into your life even as an adult. So one of the funny things I thought about was if I'm dysregulating and I'm in the middle of something with my son, I can just hold up my red stop sign and go, let's stop and let's just go and have some fun. Let's play and put whatever issue that's arisen on the shelf. And once we've played, my sympathetic nervous system is soothed and my brain's back on board, then we can go back into approaching the situation. So both of us co-regulate together, okay? There is to be no blame and no shame towards your bodily responses. So no going, oh, I shouldn't have done that, I shouldn't have been like that. All those things that you say to yourself, they can just be packed up in a nice parcel and shoved out the door, because it's more important that you instead learn to build respect for your attributes, your deficits and differences, and enjoy it. And remember too that we have to respect our body. It's brought us on a long journey to get to this space where we can take on board new information. And if it's having a response that was developed years ago, we can day by day turn that response around, and we can co-regulate together with our loved ones, however that looks for us. All right, thanks for joining in today. It's wonderful to have you with me. Remember to do the hashtag replay, and also if you have any questions or comments, feel free to welcome them. Feel free to leave them down below, and I will definitely get back to you ASAP. All right. Blessings and dreams, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye for now.